Hey all, Glen Kirschner here. Please enjoy this video on the Political Voices Network.
Yeah, I keep, because I've been mentioning all week, Glenn, this $10,000 fine, which, Trump went and raised, millions off of that from his suckers. So you're like, what is that going to do? But, I'm reading this. A different standard of law. Expert says legal system is struggling to rein in Trump. This is the question of the day, right? It's, let's see, just blah, 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 blah. He said it's really a new frontier for the legal system, and the legal system is really struggling with how to control this man who has no respect for the rule of law. Because the first thing that pops to mind is what's the $10,000 fine? That's not going to do anything. But I guess it has to go in stages. Explain that to us.
Yeah, I said the same thing with Nicole Wallace yesterday. The institutions of government have failed to sort of rise to the challenge of the moment. And Judge Chutkan said it best when I was in court during the gag order hearing. And she said if it were any other defendant who was on release in a federal felony case, and that person said the prosecutor handling his case was a deranged thug, that person would be in pretrial detention. On the one hand, she's absolutely right about that. On the other hand, she articulated the unequal application of the law and the fact that the system doesn't seem to be up to the challenge to applying the law to Donald Trump as it applies it all day, every day to everybody else. And my question is, why is that? Yeah. Why can we not meet the challenge of the moment? I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah. I just want to, on the subject of Mark Meadows, as I was saying about, one expert said Meadows' cooperation is significant for a number of reasons, including he was at the heart of everything related to Trump's Stop the Steal effort, including the pressure campaign on Pence and the fake elector scheme in several states. Not only is Meadows positioned to corroborate the astonishing testimony of credible witnesses like Cassidy Hutchinson, but he can speak firsthand as to Trump's knowledge and state of mind of all this, which is obviously crucial to Smith's criminal case against him. Meadows might also illuminate the involvement of other high-level officials whose participation in the criminal enterprise that produced the January 6th insurrection has yet to appear in any indictment, which includes our new Speaker of the House. This is what you and I have been talking about forever, Glenn, is, might Meadows be the key to all of those people, the insurrectionists in Congress?
I mean, let's hope the Department of Justice is quietly, because we certainly see no overt sign of it, quietly investigating the insurrectionists in Congress, because they continue to try to kill our democracy from within. And I think it does an extreme disservice, Steph, to the Constitution that says insurrectionists are disqualified from service. And yet, for whatever reason, again, our institutions of government choose not to apply the constitutional disqualification to members of Congress. Why?
Let's talk about it just quickly before we go. So Jack Smith and Fani Willis may share Mark Meadows as a cooperating witness, as we talked about, now that he's reached an immunity agreement with federal prosecutors. Willis could be coordinating with Smith to make sure he can testify in that federal case without complicating matters in Georgia. If Smith has granted Meadows immunity, one wonders if there's already been coordination with Georgia on the strategy. Meadows' testimony could be a huge blow to Trump because he was right in the center of the action, so to speak. If Smith has granted Meadows immunity, it will also have implications for the Georgia case, although I don't think Smith can grant Meadows transactional immunity from a Georgia charge. Smith's immunized D.C. testimony itself cannot be used as evidence in a Georgia prosecution. Can you break that all down for us? Because it all sounds really important.
I don't know who that person was that you were just reading, but they're absolutely dead on with all of that. Even though Jack Smith granted Meadows immunity in the federal case, he can't take that testimony that he has compelled Meadows to give and hand it off to Fani Willis, because that really would violate the immunity terms, right? So I also agree that it would make sense if Meadows got some level of immunity in D.C., that Meadows' lawyers are also coordinating or attempting to coordinate with Fani Willis and her prosecutors to see if he can get a similar level of immunity down there so he can testify in both cases. But here is my bottom line. Mark Meadows needs to go to prison for his crimes. We've seen so much evidence that he was complicit in Donald Trump's crimes. Burning documents after every meeting, probably not to generate warmth, I'm guessing, right? That's nefarious. So he has to be held accountable. You can't give a top dog criminal in the criminal organization a free pass and then put him on the stand and expect the jury to believe him. So, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I give both Jack Smith and DA Willis credit for knowing exactly what they're doing tactically and on the strategy front.
What do you think the time frame is, Glenn, for us finding out exactly what's happening with Mark Meadows?
We're going to learn a lot when March 4th approaches, because that is the first day of jury selection in Donald Trump's D.C. trial for attempting to overturn the election's results. I would like to know yesterday, but when Judge Chutkan said, and I quote, "This trial date will not yield to an election cycle," we're going to see that trial begin in early March, and that is when so much of what's been behind the scenes and behind closed grand jury room doors is going to come tumbling out into the public square.
Yeah. Sidebar, Your Honor.
Daddy, I want it now!
March. Okay, and finally, CNN reporting 6 more co-defendants, speaking of dominoes, 6 more co-defendants criminally charged in Georgia have discussed potential plea deals with Fulton County prosecutors. This may be the beginning of a run of plea deals on Fulton County as prosecutors aim to have defendants on board as witnesses as opposed to adversaries. It makes the prosecutor's case stronger because you have witnesses and direct evidence, but also gives co-defendants certainty and a certain level of safety knowing they aren't going to prison. So it has that feel of dominoes. One question I have is Sidney Powell going right back on social media and doing the same thing Trump's doing, claiming she's innocent. It's political persecution. The big lie is, still talking about the big lie. Does that not affect your immunity deal?
Well, she has a plea agreement, not an immunity deal, but this is who Sidney Powell is. She's a crazy lying person. And why would we expect that just because she walked into court and said, I committed those crimes, you got me, I'll plead guilty, that the next day she's off spouting more crack and nonsense? That's what we should expect from Sidney Powell. Will that cause District Attorney Willis to revisit whether she should continue to receive the plea that she accepted and get the benefit of the bargain? Or say, you know what, Sidney, we're going to revoke the plea, and that takes some legal gymnastics to be able to do that once it's entered. But assuming they can, we're going to revoke the plea. You're going to go back into the court. You're going to sit as a RICO defendant. You're going to go to prison for a couple of decades. How does that sound? This is who Sidney Powell is. And, Steph, it's also self-preservation. Yeah. When these people plead guilty, they know they're potentially inspiring Donald Trump's base to get after them. Yeah. So they're like, no, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. Well, when push comes to shove, they did mean it, and they will testify against Donald Trump and others. And this is going to be an ugly, bumpy ride. So, you better buckle up and hold on tight.
There it is, my first drink of the day, ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic. Many of you know my story. I stopped drinking wine for 3 years during COVID, during the lockdown as part of a health reset. Now I drink wine in moderation, but this is an amazing new product. I've always believed in probiotics. And ZBiotics, check this out. You drink just one of these. It's the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. I am using this and I feel great in the morning. I don't have to worry if I have an extra glass of wine, I still feel great in the morning. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. I've always had acid reflux problems. It is this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. All I know is it works. It is ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic. Go to zbiotics.com/politicalvoices or scan the QR code on the screen right now.